Doris Thames stood in her kitchen, the familiar smell of pot roast filling the air as she chopped carrots for Sunday dinner. The wooden spoon she'd been using to stir the gravy rested on a ceramic spoon her granddaughter had made in art class last year. Through the doorway, she could hear her daughter's voice, not addressing her, but someone on the phone. Patricia Hayes was using that tone, the one Doris had come to recognize. Sharp-edged, irritated, the same voice she used when complaining about overdue bills or when her husband was running late. But this time the subject wasn't bills or Tyrone's tardiness. It was Doris herself. "This old woman is nothing but trouble," Patricia whispered harshly into her phone. "I can't stand having her here at the house anymore. You wouldn't believe how much she gets in the way of everything. Tyrone has said 1,000 times he wants her out for good." Doris felt her hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. The knife she was holding clattered to the countertop. She gripped the edge of the sink, suddenly needing support to remain upright as her heart pounded painfully in her chest. She stood frozen, completely unable to move as her daughter continued oblivious to the deep wound each word was inflicting. Doris Thames, who had raised that girl alone after her father walked out when Patricia was only 3. Doris, who had worked 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for her daughter's college education. Doris, who had spent countless sleepless nights praying at Patricia's bedside when she was sick. Now she was just that old woman causing problems. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Doris didn't confront her daughter. She didn't yell. She didn't make her presence known. Instead, she retreated to her small bedroom at the back of the house in absolute silence, closing the door softly so as not to make a sound. Once inside, she knelt beside her bed the same way she had done every night for the past 60 years. "Lord, give me strength to understand what is happening to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Show me the path I need to follow." She cried quietly, muffling her sobs in her pillow, afraid someone would hear and make more jokes about the weeping old lady. The walls of her small bedroom had absorbed so many of her tears over the years, yet they never spoke of her pain. That night, while everyone slept, Doris looked out her window at the moon hanging low in the sky. In its pale light, she saw her whole life pass before her eyes, all 68 years of it. She'd worked as a housekeeper, a cook, a seamstress, a nanny, anything and everything so that Patricia could have a better future than hers. And now, at 68 years old, she realized with a hollowing ache that she had become a burden in the house that she herself had bought with her own sweat and tears. But what Patricia and Tyrone didn't know was that everything was about to change. Monday morning arrived as it always did. Doris rose early, her joints stiff and aching more than usual after a night of fitful sleep. She prepared breakfast for the entire family, grits for Tyrone, a thick fruit smoothie for Patricia, and fluffy buttermilk pancakes for Sophia, her 12-year-old granddaughter. Everything was served with a smile that grew heavier to maintain with each passing day. Patricia came downstairs, eyes glued to her phone. As usual, she didn't even look up when Doris placed the smoothie in front of her. "Mom, this smoothie is too thick. Can't you get it right even once?" Doris swallowed the hurt and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, baby. I'll add more milk." "Forget it. I don't have time." Patricia grabbed her purse and left without saying goodbye. Tyrone followed without a word. Not a good morning, not a thank you for the meal, nothing, just the sound of the front door slamming shut. Sophia lingered a moment longer, her big brown eyes studying her grandmother with concern. Those eyes so much like Patricia's when she was a little girl before life had hardened her. "Are you okay, Grandma?" Doris smiled, stroking the girl's shiny black hair. "Of course I am, my love. Go on now or you'll be late for school." Sophia hugged her tight before leaving that embrace, the only thing that kept Doris standing that day. After everyone had gone, she sat at the empty kitchen table and looked around. This house held so many memories within its walls. She had bought it 30 years ago when she was still working at the textile plant. She had saved every dollar eating simple meals to put money aside for the down payment, working double shifts on weekends. All to have a place of her own, a place where Patricia could grow up feeling secure. The walls still bore the marks of those years. Right there by the kitchen entrance, pencil marks measuring Patricia's height on each birthday. Patricia 5 years old. Patricia 7 years old. Patricia 10 years old. Doris ran her fingers over those faded marks and felt something break inside her. How had they reached this point? When had her daughter stopped seeing her as a mother and started viewing her as an obstruction? The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Esther Evans, her lifelong friend. Doris, how are you doing? Want to meet for coffee this afternoon? Doris hesitated. She didn't want to worry Esther, but her friend knew her better than anyone. Sure, friend. I'll meet you at our regular spot. That afternoon, sitting across from Esther at their usual table by the window at Marlene's diner, Doris couldn't hold it in anymore. Everything came pouring out what she'd overheard, how they treated her, how she felt invisible in her own home. Esther took her hands firmly, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, Doris, I can't believe Patricia is doing this to you after everything you sacrificed for her. Maybe it's my fault, Esther. Maybe I spoiled her too much. I gave her everything and now she doesn't value anything. Don't you dare say that. Esther's grip tightened. You were an exemplary mother. The problem isn't you. The problem is that she's forgotten where she came from. Doris sipped her coffee in silence, feeling the warmth of the cup against her cold hands. The diner buzzed with afternoon customers, but the noise seemed distant, as if she and Esther were enclosed in a bubble of shared history and understanding. I don't know what to do, Esther. I don't feel welcome in my own house anymore. Her friend leaned forward, lowering her voice. Doris, is that house still in your name? Yes. When Patricia married Tyrone 15 years ago, I put her name on the deed too, but I'm still the principal owner. Esther looked at her with an intensity Doris had rarely seen in her normally gentle friend. Then you have options, friend. You have more power than you realize. Those words kept spinning in Doris's head all the way home. Options. What options did a 68-year-old woman who had spent her whole life giving everything to her family have? When she arrived home, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, she heard raised voices. Patricia was arguing with Tyrone in the living room. I'm telling you I can't take it anymore. My mother is here all day, meddling in everything, asking annoying questions. I know, baby, but we can't just kick her out. What will people say? I don't care what people say. I want my space. I want my house back. Doris stood at the entrance, listening to every heartbreaking word. Tyrone continued his deep voice, carrying easily through the house. Look, my mother Brenda says she knows a very nice assisted living facility on the other side of town. We could go see it this weekend. An assisted living facility. They wanted to put her in a home after everything she had done. After giving them this house, after cooking, cleaning, and taking care of Sophia when they went out, they wanted to get rid of her, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience. Doris couldn't remain silent any longer. She walked into the living room, her small frame straight with dignity, despite the pain threatening to buckle her knees. Both Patricia and Tyrone fell silent immediately, guilt written across their faces. Hi, Mom, Patricia said with a forced, cheerful voice. How was your time with Esther? Fine. Doris's voice emerged calmer than she expected. I overheard you talking about the facility. The silence was deafening. Patricia exchanged a glance with Tyrone, then looked back at her mother. Mom, well, we thought maybe you'd be more comfortable in a place where there are people your age where they can take better care of you. Care ye, Doris's voice cracked slightly. Who takes care of me here? I'm the one who takes care of everybody. I cook, I clean, I look after my grandbaby. What more do you want me to do? Tyrone stood from the sofa, towering over her with that condescending attitude he always used when addressing her. Doris, you have to understand. You're getting old. You need to rest. Stop working so hard. At the facility, you'd have everything: meals, doctors' activities with people your age. This is my house, Tyrone. I bought it with my money. Patricia stepped closer, putting on that sweet girl face that didn't fool Doris anymore. Mom, nobody is saying it's not your house, but living here is causing you stress. You look tired all the time. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me? Doris repeated, tasting the lie. You mean what's best for you? What's best is to have the house free without the annoying old woman. Mom, don't be dramatic. Patricia's voice rose. Always making a huge drama out of everything. That's why it's so hard to talk to you. Doris turned around and went upstairs to her room. She locked the door for the first time in years. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked around this small room at the back of the house. The room she had accepted so they could have the bigger bedrooms, the room where she had cried so many nights in silence. On the wall hung an old photograph of Patricia when she was 5 years old. They were in a park, just the two of them. She was wearing a yellow dress that Doris had sewn herself. She was smiling, holding her mother tight. That little girl had loved her. That little girl had needed her. Where had that child gone? Doris took the photo and placed it in her drawer. She couldn't keep looking at the past. She had to think about the present, about her future. She didn't join them for dinner that night. She stayed in her room listening to their laughter floating up from downstairs. Brenda Miller, Tyrone's mother, had come for dinner. Doris could hear her shrill voice from where she sat. "Oh, Patricia, you're so lucky to have this nice house. I always said Tyrone deserved the best." "Thank you, Mom. Though sometimes it's hard to keep everything in order with, well, you know." "Oh yes, your mother. Poor thing. But don't worry, honey. We'll find a solution. My sister works at a very decent facility. I can get you a discount." They were talking about her as if she no longer existed, as if she were already dead, and they just needed to make the funeral arrangements. Doris knelt by her bed and prayed as she hadn't prayed in years. "Lord, you who are the ultimate mother, you who know what it is to love a child more than your own life, help me. Show me what to do. Give me the strength I need." And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She was no longer the Doris who accepted everything without a word. She was no longer the Doris who made herself small so as not to bother anyone. She was the Doris who had worked 3 jobs. The Doris who had raised her daughter alone. The Doris who had bought this house with her own effort. The next day, Tuesday morning, Doris waited for everyone to leave. Tyrone left first at 7:00. Patricia took Sophia to school at 8:00. The house was empty and silent. She took her metal box out of the closet where she kept all her important documents. The house deed, her birth certificate, bank papers, all in order, all carefully guarded over the years. The house deed clearly stated Doris Thames principal owner. Below, added years later, Patricia Hayes co-owner. She called a number Esther had given her. It was a lawyer, the son of a friend of hers. His name was Andrew Peterson. "Good morning, Mrs. Thames. My mother told me about your situation. How can I help you?" Doris explained everything, the humiliations, the nursing home plan, how they treated her in her own house. He listened without interrupting. "Ma'am, you have every legal right to make changes regarding your property. As the principal owner, you can make decisions that affect the use of the house. Are you sure about what you want to do?" "More certain than I've been in a long-time attorney." "Very well. I will prepare the documents. Everything will be ready in 1 week." Doris hung up the phone, her hands trembling not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years: power, control over her own life. The next few days, Doris moved through her own house like a ghost. She did everything as usual, cooked, cleaned, and smiled when necessary. But inside, something had changed. Their contempt didn't hurt in the same way. She no longer felt small when Brenda came over for lunch and treated her like a servant. Patricia noticed something was different. On Wednesday, while Doris was washing dishes after lunch, she approached her mother. "Mom, are you okay? You seem strange." "I'm fine, baby, just tired. Have you thought about what we told you about the facility? Brenda can take us to see it this Saturday." Doris kept washing the dishes without turning around. "We'll see, Patricia. We'll see." Her daughter left, annoyed, muttering something Doris didn't catch, but it didn't matter anymore. For the first time in a long time, she didn't care what Patricia thought. On Thursday afternoon, Andrew called. "Mrs. Thames, the documents are ready. You can come to my office tomorrow." "I'll be there, attorney." That night, Sophia came to her room after finishing her homework. She sat on Doris's bed with a sad expression. "Grandma, is it true that you're going to move somewhere else?" It broke Doris's heart to see those little eyes full of tears. "Come here, my life." She hugged her granddaughter tight, feeling the small body tremble. "No matter what happens, I will always be here for you. Maybe not in this house, but always in your heart and in your life. But I don't want you to leave. I love you so much, Grandma. You're the only one who really listens to me. And you are my reason for keeping on, sweetie. Never forget that." She rocked Sophia until the girl calmed down. When she left for her room, Doris stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that was about to happen. On Friday morning, she dressed with care. She put on her blue dress, the one saved for special occasions. She did her hair neatly and fastened her silver earrings, a gift from Patricia many years ago when her daughter still saw her as someone worthy of gifts. Doris left the house before anyone woke up, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "Went out early. Have things to do. Doris." Andrew's office was downtown in an old but well-maintained building. His secretary greeted her with a kind smile. "He's waiting for you, Mrs. Thames." "Please go in." Andrew was a man in his 40s with glasses and a neat tie. He welcomed her with respect, offering coffee and cookies. Mrs. Thames, here are all the documents. I've reviewed them very carefully. As the principal owner, you have the right to request that the co-owners vacate the property if there are justified grounds. In your case, the humiliations and psychological mistreatment constitute more than sufficient grounds. He explained everything patiently, point by point, her rights, the steps they would take, what to expect. How long do they have to leave? She asked, feeling her voice tremble slightly. The document gives them 30 days to vacate the property. That's enough time for them to find another place. 30 days. 1 month. Doris took a deep breath. And my granddaughter? Your granddaughter is a minor. She goes with her parents, but you can request a visitation schedule. You won't lose contact with her. Doris signed the documents with a firm hand. Each signature was a step toward her freedom, toward reclaiming her dignity. The documents will be delivered tomorrow afternoon directly to your daughter and son-in-law. An official process server will go to the house. Thank you, attorney. Truly thank you. You don't have to thank me, Mrs. Thames. You are doing the right thing. No one deserves to be mistreated in their own home. Doris walked back home slowly. It was mid-afternoon and the sun was warm on her face. She stopped at a church along the way, stepping inside to sit in a back pew. Dear Lord, give me strength for what is coming. Protect Sophia. Help Patricia understand someday why I did this. And give me peace, Lord. Give me peace. When she arrived home, everyone was there. Patricia, Tyrone, Brenda, and Sophia were in the living room talking animatedly about something. Mom, where were you? Patricia stood. We've been calling you all afternoon. I went out to take care of some things. What things? Tyrone looked at her with suspicion that he never quite bothered to hide. My own. Doris went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Brenda followed her, a smug smile on her face. Doris, tomorrow we're going to see the facility. We agreed on 10 in the morning. You need to be ready. Doris turned to look at her, this woman who had never respected her, who had always treated her as less. I am not going to any facility, Brenda. What do you mean no, everything is arranged? You can't be so stubborn. This is my house and I'm staying here. Brenda huffed angrily and returned to the living room. Doris could hear them whispering, surely discussing how difficult and obstinate she was being. She ate dinner with them in silence that night. Sophia kept glancing at her worriedly. Patricia and Tyrone avoided her eyes. Brenda talked non-stop about the wonders of the facility as if Doris weren't even there. When everyone went to bed, Doris stayed in the kitchen washing the dishes and looking out the window at her small backyard garden. There was a rose bush she'd planted when Patricia was a baby. It was still blooming after all these years, surviving neglect and harsh weather, just as she had survived her own hardships. Tomorrow everything changes, she told herself softly. Tomorrow, my new life begins. For the first time in years, she slept peacefully without nightmares or anxiety because she knew she had made the right decision. The next day, Saturday afternoon, the moment arrived. Doris was in her room when she heard the doorbell, followed by voices at the door, and then shouting. What is this, Mom, come down right now? It was Patricia's voice, full of rage and panic. Doris walked down the stairs slowly, each step deliberate and measured. In the living room, Patricia and Tyrone stood holding the legal papers, their faces flushed with anger. The process server had already left. What does this mean? Patricia thrust the documents at her hands, shaking. You're kicking us out of the house. I am exercising my rights as the principal owner of this property. Doris's voice was steady, surprising even herself. You have 30 days to find another place. Tyrone approached her, his height intimidating as he towered over her. This is abuse. You can't do this. I can, and I am doing it. You have 30 days to find another place. Patricia collapsed onto the sofa, crying. I can't believe it. My own mother. After everything we've done for you. Doris had to take a deep breath, not to scream. Everything you've done for me. Humiliating me. Treating me like a servant. Planning to put me in a home without even consulting me. That's what you've done for me. We gave you a roof over your head. Food, Tyrone yelled, his face contorted with rage. This house is mine. I buy the food with my Social Security check. I gave you a roof over your heads, and you repaid me with contempt. The silence that followed hung heavy in the air. Sophia appeared on the stairs, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Grandma, the girl's voice was small and uncertain. Come here, my love. Doris opened her arms and Sophia ran to her, while Patricia and Tyrone glared at them with undisguised hatred. "This is not going to stand," Tyrone threatened, his voice low and dangerous. "We're going to fight this legally. Go right ahead. Attorney Andrew Peterson will be waiting for your call." That night, the house filled with yelling, slamming doors, and tears. But Doris stood firm. After 68 years of giving everything for others, she was finally choosing to give something to herself. Dignity. The days that followed were among the most painful of Doris's life. Patricia barely looked at her during meals. She ate in silence, scrolling on her phone as if her mother didn't exist. Tyrone walked past her in the hallway, as if she were invisible without a good morning or good night. Brenda, who used to come for lunch every day, now arrived even more frequently, only to make Doris feel worse. "Doris, fetch me some water. Doris, the food is bland again. Doris, don't you have anything better to do with your life besides standing there in the way?" Doris didn't answer. She had promised herself to stay calm to maintain her dignity, but every word caused an immense sadness that she kept inside like a painful secret. One morning, while cleaning the living room, she found an old box under the sofa. She recognized it immediately, the box where she kept photos of Patricia's childhood. She opened it with trembling hands, and memories flooded back like a wave. There was Patricia at 2 in her floral dress that was too big, because Doris had bought it at the thrift store, thinking it would last longer. There she was at 5 on her first day of kindergarten, with the braids Doris had done for her every morning before sunrise so she could get to work on time. There she was at 8, losing her first tooth, smiling so wide you could see all the others. Doris sat on the living room floor, surrounded by photos, and cried. She cried for that little girl who had loved her. She cried for the years she'd spent working to give her everything. She cried for the woman Patricia had become so different from the daughter she had raised. She remembered when Patricia was 7 and got pneumonia. It was January, bitterly cold, and they had no heat in their apartment. Doris had slept embracing her every night to keep her warm. She had worked days cleaning for a wealthy family and nights sewing clothes to sell. She had used that money to pay for medicine. She remembered spending 3 days straight without sleeping, watching over her daughter, praying for her to get better. When the fever finally broke and Patricia opened her eyes and smiled, saying, "Mommy," Doris had felt that all the exhaustion in the world had been worth it. She had promised her daughter she would always take care of her, that she would always be there for her. Now that promise felt like a burden that only she had carried. Doris put the photos back in the box and carried it to her room. She couldn't bear to look at them every day. They broke her heart anew each time she saw those images of happiness that seemed to belong to another lifetime. That afternoon, when Patricia came home from work, she wore a scowl on her face. Brenda came with her. They entered the house talking in low voices, but loud enough for Doris to hear from the kitchen. "I can't believe your mother did this to us," Brenda said, "after everything you've done for her, giving her a home food care." "I know, Mom, but my mother has always been like this, dramatic, manipulative. Now she's using the house as a weapon to control us." Doris squeezed the kitchen towel in her hands until her knuckles hurt. Manipulative her, the woman who had given everything without asking for anything in return. "You should fight this legally," Brenda continued. "Tyrone has rights. You've lived here 15 years. That has to count for something. We already spoke to a lawyer. He says since she's the principal owner and we're just co-owners, she has the right to ask us to leave, but we're looking at other options." Doris stepped into the doorway. "What options?" Both women fell silent, immediately exchanging guilty looks. Patricia cleared her throat. "Mom, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Look, I know you're upset, and maybe we made mistakes too, but what you're doing is too much. Kicking us out of the house where we've lived for 15 years, where Sophia grew up, it's cruel, Mom. Cruel." Doris felt something break inside her. "Cruel, like planning to put me in a home without asking me. Cruel, like calling me an old woman who only causes problems. Cruel, like treating me like a servant in my own house." "We never treated you like a servant," Patricia shouted, her face red with anger. "No! Then what was it? When was the last time you thanked me for making a meal? When was the last time you asked how I was feeling? When was the last time you treated me like your mother and not like an inconvenience?" Brenda jumped into the conversation. "Doris, don't be so dramatic. Young people are like that now. They're busy. They have a lot of pressure. You can't expect them to be waiting on you all the time." "I don't expect them to wait on me all the time, Brenda. I just expect a minimum of respect, something no one in this house seems to know how to give." Patricia slammed the door as she went to her room. Brenda shot Doris a venomous look before following her daughter-in-law. Doris was left alone in the living room, trembling with anger and sadness. But beneath those emotions, there was something else, a growing sense of righteousness, of reclaiming what was hers. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, she was walking with her head held high. That night, Sophia came to her room after everyone had fallen asleep. She tapped gently on the door. "Grandma, can I come in?" "Of course, my life. Come here." The girl entered, her eyes swollen from crying. She sat on Doris's bed and hugged her tightly. "Grandma, my mom says we have to leave the house. She says it's your fault. Why are you doing this?" It broke Doris's heart to see her granddaughter like that. She sat Sophia on her lap as she had when the girl was smaller and stroked her hair. "My love, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions that hurt but are necessary. But I don't want to leave. This is my house, my room, my things. My memories are here. I know, sweetie, and believe me, this hurts me more than anyone, but your mom and dad have made me feel like I'm not welcome here, and no one should live in a place where they are not wanted. But I want you here, Grandma. I love you so much. And I love you, my darling, more than anything in this world, and that will never change. Wherever you live, I will always be here for you. Always." She rocked Sophia until the girl fell asleep in her arms. Then she carried her to her room just like when she was a baby. She tucked her in carefully and kissed her forehead. "Forgive me, my child," she whispered. "Forgive me for not being able to protect you from all of this." Doris returned to her room and knelt by her bed, praying for strength for the days ahead. The hardest part of her decision was knowing it would affect Sophia, but she hoped that one day her granddaughter would understand. Tomorrow would bring more confrontations, more tears, more anger. But Doris was ready. After a lifetime of putting others first, she had finally found the courage to stand up for herself. It wasn't selfishness, it was survival. As she lay in bed watching shadows play across the ceiling, Doris felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation. She had lost so much, but perhaps, just perhaps, she was on the verge of gaining something precious. Her sense of self, her dignity, the respect she deserved. She closed her eyes, and for once sleep came easily. Tomorrow would be another battle, but tonight she rested in the knowledge that she had taken the first step toward reclaiming her life. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Doris's room, casting a golden glow across the wooden floor. She had been awake for hours, watching the darkness give way to dawn. This Sunday morning felt different from all the ones that came before. The house was unusually quiet. The silence no longer felt oppressive, but almost expectant, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath to see what would happen next. Doris rose slowly, her joints stiff from another restless night. Yesterday's confrontation had changed everything. The legal papers delivered by the process server had unleashed a storm, and now they were all living in its aftermath. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple lavender blouse and navy slacks clothes that made her feel put together, dignified. Today she would need every ounce of strength she possessed. As she made her way downstairs, the sound of hushed voices from the kitchen stopped her in her tracks. Patricia and Tyrone were already up, speaking in urgent whispers. Doris paused on the landing, not hiding her presence, but not announcing it either. "We need to talk to her again. Make her understand how unreasonable she's being." Tyrone's voice was tight with controlled anger. Patricia's response came with a tremor. "She won't listen. You saw her yesterday. It's like she's become someone else entirely." "Then we get another lawyer. There has to be something we can do." Doris took a deep breath and continued down the stairs, each step deliberate. The conversation in the kitchen abruptly ceased as she entered. Patricia sat at the table, eyes red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep, while Tyrone stood by the counter, arms crossed over his chest. "Good morning." Doris moved to the coffee pot, her movement steady despite the tension crackling in the air. Neither of them returned her greeting. Patricia stared down at her hands while Tyrone watched Doris with barely concealed hostility. The silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. "Mom, we need to talk about this." Patricia finally looked up, her voice wavering between anger and pleading. "You can't possibly be serious about making us leave." Doris poured her coffee with a steady hand. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "But where are we supposed to go?" Patricia's voice rose, edging toward hysteria. "We can't just find a new house in 30 days. You seem to have no trouble finding a facility for me in just a weekend." Doris stirred a spoonful of sugar into her coffee, the clink of the spoon against the ceramic cup punctuating her words. Tyrone stepped forward, his tall frame looming over Doris. "This isn't right, and you know it. After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me." Doris set her cup down with such force that coffee sloshed over the rim. "Let's be very clear about who has done what for whom in this house." The sound of small footsteps on the stairs broke the tension. Sophia appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her eyes wide as she sensed the conflict. "Why is everyone fighting?" The girl's voice was small and certain. Patricia rushed to her daughter, putting an arm around her shoulders. "We're not fighting, sweetie. We're just having a grown-up discussion. About us leaving. Daddy was shouting about it last night." Doris's heart clenched at her granddaughter's distress. This was the hardest part of her decision, seeing how it affected Sophia. But she reminded herself that staying in a house where she was disrespected and unappreciated would teach the girl all the wrong lessons about dignity and self-worth. "Come have some breakfast, sweetheart." Doris turned to the stove, pushing her pain aside. "I'll make your favorite pancakes." The family ate in strained silence. Sophia kept glancing between the adults, absorbing the tension, though no one spoke of it directly. After breakfast, Patricia took Sophia upstairs to get dressed for Sunday school, leaving Doris and Tyrone alone. "My mother is coming over this afternoon." Tyrone's voice was cold as he gathered the dishes. "She wants to talk some sense into you." Doris met his gaze without flinching. "Brenda has never shown me an ounce of respect in all the years I've known her. Why would I listen to her now?" "Because unlike you, she's thinking about what's best for everyone, not just herself." The words were meant to wound, and they did, but Doris refused to show it. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "Being selfish after decades of putting everyone else first. I finally stand up for myself, and that makes me selfish." Tyrone turned away without answering, leaving the kitchen with heavy footsteps that seemed to shake the floor. Doris remained at the table, hands clasped tightly in her lap, fighting back tears that threatened to fall. She would not cry. Not now, not when she had finally found her voice. An hour later, the front door slammed as Patricia, Tyrone, and Sophia left for church without inviting Doris. Though Sunday service had always been a family affair, the exclusion stung, but it also strengthened her resolve. This was the reality of her place in their lives, disposable and afterthought, someone whose feelings didn't matter. The quiet house felt both lonely and liberating. Doris moved through the rooms, touching familiar surfaces, looking at photographs on the walls with new eyes. So many moments captured in frames. Birthdays, graduations, holidays. All with her standing slightly to the side, always there, but somehow apart. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Esther. "How are things going? I've been thinking about you nonstop since you told me about the papers." Doris sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "It's been difficult. They're angry, hurt, confused, as if they can't understand why I would do something so drastic." "Stay strong, friend. This was never going to be easy, but it's necessary." Esther's voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly what Doris was going through. "Do you want me to come over, be there when Brenda arrives?" "No, I need to handle this myself, but thank you for offering." Doris glanced at the clock on the wall. "They'll be back from church soon, and Brenda's coming with them. I should prepare myself." "Remember why you're doing this, Doris. It's not just about the house. It's about your dignity." After hanging up, Doris went to her room and took out the metal box of important documents. She laid them on the bed, reading through each one carefully. The house deed, insurance papers, her will. She'd need to make changes to the latter. Patricia was currently her sole beneficiary. Perhaps she should leave something directly to Sophia instead. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway signaled the family's return. Doris put away her papers and took a moment to steady herself before heading downstairs. Voices drifted up from below, more than just Patricia, Tyrone, and Sophia. Brenda had arrived with them. Doris descended the stairs to find them all gathered in the living room. Brenda sat in what had always been Doris's favorite chair, as if making a statement. The older woman wore an expensive-looking dress and too much jewelry, her makeup perfect as always. Beside her on the sofa, Patricia and Tyrone sat close together, a united front. Sophia was nowhere to be seen, probably sent to her room to keep her away from the coming confrontation. "There she is." Brenda's voice dripped with false sweetness. "The woman of the hour." Doris remained standing, hands clasped in front of her. "Brenda." "Doris, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what you're doing to this family." Brenda leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping against the armrest. This stunt with the legal papers, it's unnecessary and frankly cruel. I don't see how exercising my legal rights as the homeowner constitutes a stunt. Doris kept her voice even though her pulse quickened. Come now, we all know what this is really about. Brenda waved a dismissive hand. You're upset because Patricia and Tyrone suggested the retirement community. You're punishing them for trying to do what's best for you. What's best for me? Doris couldn't contain a short, humorless laugh. Since when has anyone in this house been concerned with what's best for me? Patricia began to protest, but Doris cut her off with a raised hand. No, let's be honest for once. You and Tyrone have been treating me like an unwelcome guest in my own home for years. I cook, I clean, I watch Sophia when you go out, and in return I get contempt. That's not true. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. We've given you a place to live, food. This is my house, Patricia. I bought it with money I earned working 3 jobs while raising you alone. I pay for groceries with my Social Security check. I didn't move in with you. You moved in with me. And somehow over the years you've convinced yourselves that you're doing me a favor by letting me stay in my own home. The room fell silent. Doris's words hung in the air between them, uncomfortable truths that no one wanted to acknowledge. Brenda broke the silence first, her tone shifting from sweetness to steel. Well, if that's how you feel, perhaps we should look at a different solution. Patricia Tyrone, you could buy your mother out. Pay her for her portion of the house and she can find somewhere else to live. You want to buy me out of my own home? Doris stared at them in disbelief. The home I've lived in for 30 years. It would solve everything. Tyrone spoke up, his voice eager. We could get a home equity loan, give you enough to find a nice condo or apartment. Or perhaps that retirement community after all. Brenda smiled thinly. You'd have your independence and everyone would be happy. Doris looked at each of their faces. Brenda's calculating gaze, Tyrone's barely concealed greed, and Patricia's tearful expression that somehow managed to make her the victim in all this. A wave of clarity washed over her, cold and bracing. These people weren't interested in compromise or understanding. They wanted her gone out of the way, no longer an inconvenience to their lives. No, the single word fell from her lips with finality. I will not sell my home. I will not be bought out. The legal papers stand. You have 29 days left to find a new place to live. Brenda's face flushed with anger. You ungrateful old woman, after everything Patricia has done for you. What exactly has she done for me, Brenda? Please enlighten me. Doris spread her hands wide. Because from where I stand, I've been the one giving for decades, and all I've asked for in return is basic respect. Mom, please, Patricia pleaded. Don't do this. Where will we go? That's not my concern anymore. The words hurt to say, but Doris forced them out. You're both adults with good jobs. You'll figure it out just like I had to figure everything out when your father left us with nothing. Tyrone stood abruptly. This conversation is over. We'll be speaking to our lawyer tomorrow. Feel free. My attorney assures me that my position is legally sound. Brenda rose as well, gathering her purse with jerky movements. I always knew you were difficult, Doris, but I never realized how vindictive you could be. Come, Patricia. We'll discuss this elsewhere. They left the room, leaving Doris alone with the echo of their words. She sank into her chair, the one Brenda had been sitting in, and closed her eyes. The confrontation had drained her, but she felt no regret, only a grim determination to see this through. That evening the house was eerily quiet. Patricia and Tyrone had gone out with Brenda, presumably to discuss their options. Sophia had been left in Doris's care without a word, as if the girl were an afterthought, a detail too minor to discuss. Doris made dinner for herself and her granddaughter, trying to keep things as normal as possible. Sophia picked at her food, unusually subdued. Are you okay, sweetheart? Doris reached across the table to brush a strand of hair from the girl's face. Sophia looked up, eyes too serious for a 12-year-old. Is it true what Mom and Dad said, that you're making us leave because you don't love us anymore? The question felt like a knife to Doris's heart. Oh, my darling, no. That's not true at all. I love you more than anything in this world. Then why are you making us go away? Doris considered her words carefully. How could she explain complex adult relationships to a child? How could she make Sophia understand without turning her against her parents? Sometimes people who love each other still need space from each other. Your mom and dad haven't been treating me with respect, and that hurts me very much. I need them to understand that's not okay. But why do I have to leave too? I respect you, Grandma. I know you do, sweetheart. And I wish there was a way for you to stay with me. But you need to be with your parents, and they need to find a new place to live. Sophia's bottom lip trembled. Will I still see you? Of course you will, I promise. Nothing could keep me from seeing you. Doris squeezed her granddaughter's hand. This isn't goodbye. It's just a change, and sometimes changes are necessary, even when they hurt. After dinner, Doris helped Sophia with her homework and then tucked her into bed with a story just like old times. When she was sure the girl was asleep, she went back downstairs to wait for Patricia and Tyrone's return. They came home after midnight. Doris could hear them arguing in hushed voices as they entered the front door, closing with a thud that seemed too loud in the quiet house. We can't afford anything decent in this neighborhood. Tyrone's voice was tight with frustration. Not with today's rental prices. We don't have a choice. Patricia sounded exhausted. We have to find something. She's not going to change her mind. Your mother has lost her damn mind. After everything we've done, keep your voice down. Sophia's sleeping. Doris remained in the darkened living room, not hiding but not announcing her presence either. They passed by without seeing her heading upstairs, their footsteps heavy with defeat and resentment. The days that followed established a new rhythm in the household, a cold war of avoidance and tension. Patricia and Tyrone spent most of their free time looking at rental properties, returning home with increasingly worried expressions. The housing market was tight, prices high, and their time running short. Doris continued her daily routines, cooking, cleaning, tending to her garden. She made meals for everyone out of habit, though Patricia and Tyrone often chose to eat out rather than sit at the table with her. Only Sophia remained the same, if a bit more subdued, still seeking out her grandmother's company whenever possible. On Wednesday afternoon, Doris received an unexpected visitor. She was tending to her roses when a car pulled into the driveway, a car she didn't recognize. A moment later, an older gentleman in a well-tailored suit approached the garden. Mrs. Thames, I'm Richard Bennett Tyrone and Patricia's attorney. He extended a hand, his manner professional but not unkind. Doris wiped her hands on her gardening apron before accepting the handshake. I assume you're here about the eviction notice. I am. Would you mind if we spoke for a few minutes? I'd like to discuss some options that might be more amicable for all parties involved. Doris led him inside to the kitchen, offering coffee, which he politely declined. They sat across from each other at the table, where so many family meals had been shared in better times. Mrs. Thames, my clients have asked me to present an alternative solution. Richard placed a folder on the table between them. They're prepared to offer you a buyout for your share of the property. A very generous one, I might add. Doris didn't touch the folder. I've already made my position clear. The house is not for sale. Please just take a look at the numbers before you decide. He slid the folder closer to her. They're offering well above market value. With reluctant fingers, Doris opened the folder. Inside was a formal offer letter and a cashier's check for $75,000, a fraction of what the house was worth, even for just her share. This is what they consider generous. She couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. This house is worth over $500,000 in today's market. Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. They're somewhat limited in what they can afford, Mrs. Thames, but they thought, given your age and circumstances, this amount would be sufficient for you to relocate comfortably. My age and circumstances. Doris closed the folder with deliberate care. You mean they thought an old woman wouldn't know the value of her own property, that I'd be so desperate to avoid conflict that I'd accept pennies on the dollar? That's not what I meant. Please take this back to my daughter and son-in-law and tell them I decline their offer. Doris stood, signaling the end of the conversation. The eviction notice stands. 26 days remaining. After the lawyer left, Doris sat alone in the kitchen, a mixture of anger and sadness washing over her. That they would try to cheat her this way, to take advantage of her in the very manner they accused her of being difficult. It confirmed everything she already knew about how little they valued her. That evening, when Patricia and Tyrone returned from work, the confrontation was immediate and heated. You rejected the offer without even discussing it with us. Patricia's face was flushed with anger as she stormed into the kitchen where Doris was preparing dinner. Do you have any idea how hard we worked to put that money together? Doris continued chopping vegetables, her knife striking the cutting board with measured precision. You offered me less than 15% of what this house is worth. That's not a negotiation, it's an insult. It's all we could afford. Patricia's voice rose to a near shout. We're trying to find a solution here, Mom, a way that works for everyone. A way that works for you, you mean? Doris set down her knife and turned to face her daughter fully. You want me to give up my home of 30 years for a pittance so that you don't have to be inconvenienced by finding a new place to live. Tyrone joined them, his presence filling the doorway. We thought you'd be reasonable about this, that you'd want to help your family. Help my family? Doris's laugh held no humor. I've spent my entire life helping my family. I worked myself to the bone to give Patricia everything she needed. I welcomed you into my home when you were struggling to afford rent. I've cooked your meals, cleaned your messes, watched your child. And in return, you've treated me like an unwanted house guest. That's not true. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Tears that once would have broken Doris's heart, but now only strengthened her resolve. You're twisting everything. Then tell me, when was the last time either of you thanked me for anything I've done? When was the last time you asked how I was feeling or what I wanted? When was the last time you treated me with basic dignity in my own home? The silence that followed was answer enough. Patricia and Tyrone exchanged glances, neither able to recall a specific instance. That's what I thought. Doris turned back to her cooking. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm making dinner for Sophia and myself. You two can fend for yourselves tonight. The next morning, Doris awoke to find Patricia sitting alone at the kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee. Her daughter looked up when Doris entered, her expression unreadable. We found a place. Patricia's voice was flat, resigned. A 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It's small and the rent is ridiculous, but it's available now. We're moving in 2 weeks. Relief and sadness mingled in Doris's chest, relief that they had found something, sadness that it had come to this. I'm glad you found a place. Patricia stared down at her coffee. Are you really glad, Mom? Or is this exactly what you wanted all along, to punish us? This was never about punishment, Patricia. It was about respect. Doris poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from her daughter. Something I haven't received in this house for a very long time. And you think this will fix that, forcing us out of our home? This is my home, Patricia. One that I welcomed you into 15 years ago when you and Tyrone were struggling. Somehow over the years you forgot that. You forgot all the sacrifices I made for you, all the ways I tried to make your life easier. Patricia's eyes filled with tears that this time seemed genuine. I never forgot, Mom. Life got complicated. Tyrone lost his job that first year, then Sophia came along. There were bills, stress. I guess I started taking you for granted. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement that Doris had heard since this all began. Not quite an apology, but a recognition of the truth. Taking someone for granted is forgetting to thank them for dinner, Doris said softly. What you did went far beyond that. You and Tyrone made me feel unwelcome and unwanted in my own home. You planned to put me in a facility without even discussing it with me, as if my wishes didn't matter at all. We thought it would be better for you there, with people your own age, activities. That wasn't your decision to make. Doris's voice remained gentle but firm. I'm not a child, Patricia. I'm a grown woman who is perfectly capable of deciding where and how I want to live. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding and hurt between them. What happens after we leave? Patricia finally asked. Will we still see you? Will Sophia? Of course. I would never keep Sophia from seeing me, or you for that matter. But things will have to be different. There will need to be boundaries, respect. Patricia nodded slowly. Tyrone's still angry. He blames you for all of this. Tyrone has never respected me from the first day he entered this house. Doris took a sip of her coffee. That's something he'll have to work through on his own. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the stairs, Sophia coming down for breakfast. Patricia quickly wiped her eyes and plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Morning, sweetie. Grandma and I were just talking about the new apartment. We're going to look at it today after school. Want to come? As the days passed and the move grew closer, the atmosphere in the house shifted from hostile to melancholy. Boxes appeared in corners, gradually filling with belongings. Walls were stripped of pictures, leaving faded squares on the paint where family photos had hung for years. Doris watched the dismantling of 15 years of shared life with mixed emotions. There was sadness, certainly, but also a growing sense of anticipation for the next chapter. Once they were gone, she could reclaim her space, redecorate, perhaps even turn Sophia's room into a sewing room as she'd always wanted. A week before the move, Brenda made one final attempt to intervene. She arrived unannounced on a Saturday morning, dressed as if for church in a floral dress and pearls. "I need to speak with you, Doris. Alone." Her tone brooked no argument. Doris led her to the back patio away from the busy packing inside. They sat across from each other on wrought iron chairs, the rose garden Doris had tended for decades, providing a fragrant backdrop to their conversation. "You've made quite a mess of things." Brenda's voice was cool, accusatory. "My son and your daughter have been forced to take an apartment they can barely afford because of your stubbornness." "They've been forced to find their own housing because I've decided to reclaim my home," Doris corrected. "Something many people their age manage to do without difficulty. At their age, most people have had time to save for a down payment. They've been helping you all these years instead." Doris raised an eyebrow. "Helping me by living rent-free in my house, by expecting me to cook and clean for them while they treated me with contempt." "You're being melodramatic as usual." Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "They gave you a roof over your head companionship." "It was my roof, Brenda. My house that I paid for long before they moved in." Doris leaned forward, her patience wearing thin. "And as for companionship, being treated like an unwelcome guest or a servant is hardly what I'd call companionship." Brenda's expression hardened. "You know, Doris, I've never understood what my son saw in your daughter, but I accepted her because Tyrone loved her. I even accepted you, difficult as you are. But this is unforgivable." "I don't require your forgiveness, Brenda, nor do I need your acceptance." Doris stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have gardening to do." As Brenda left in a huff, Doris turned to her roses, finding solace in the simple task of pruning and watering. These plants had weathered storms and droughts over the years, yet they continued to bloom. In that resilience, Doris saw a reflection of herself, battered by life's hardships, but still capable of beauty and growth. The final days before the move brought a flurry of activity. Movers came to take the larger furniture. Tyrone's brother arrived with a pickup truck for smaller items. Through it all, Doris maintained a quiet dignity, helping when asked, but largely staying out of the way. Sophia was struggling with the change, clinging to her grandmother whenever possible. The night before the move, she appeared at Doris's bedroom door in tears. "Can I stay with you tonight, Grandma? Please?" Doris opened her arms and Sophia rushed into them. They sat together on the edge of the bed, the girl's small frame shaking with sobs. "I don't want to go to the new place. I want to stay here with you." Stroking her granddaughter's hair, Doris fought back her own tears. "I know, my love. I wish you could stay too, but you need to be with your parents, and they need to find their own way now. Will you come visit us? Promise you will." "Of course I will. And you can come here too whenever you want. This will always be your second home." They fell asleep together, grandmother and granddaughter holding on to each other as if their embrace could somehow bridge the separation to come. Moving day dawned bright and clear, as if the weather itself were celebrating the change. The apartment was ready, the trucks loaded. All that remained were the final goodbyes. Patricia stood in the entryway looking lost, despite being surrounded by the last of their packed belongings. "I guess this is it." Doris nodded, a lump in her throat preventing words. "I still don't understand why it had to be this way." Patricia's voice was quiet, tinged with lingering resentment, but also something else, perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Someday you will." Doris finally found her voice. "Someday when you're my age, you'll understand what it means to stand up for your own dignity, even when it breaks your heart to do so." Tyrone appeared from upstairs carrying the last box. He paused, looking between the two women, then continued past them without a word, his silence more eloquent than any goodbye. Sophia was the last to leave, clinging to Doris with desperate arms. "I'll see you Saturday, right? You promised." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away." Doris kissed her granddaughter's forehead, memorizing the feel of her in her arms. "I love you more than anything in this world, Sophia. Never forget that." Then they were gone. The house fell silent in a way it hadn't been in 15 years. Doris stood in the empty entryway, listening to the echoing quiet, feeling the weight of her decisions settle fully upon her shoulders. She had won, but victory tasted bittersweet. She had reclaimed her home, but at what cost? The relationship with her daughter was damaged, perhaps beyond repair. Her son-in-law would likely never forgive her. Only time would tell if the price had been worth paying. Doris walked through the half-empty house, touching walls and door frames as if reconnecting with an old friend. In Patricia and Tyrone's former bedroom, now stripped of furniture except for the basic bed frame they'd left behind, She stood by the window looking out at the street where their car had disappeared. The hardest choices are often the right ones, she whispered to herself, words her own mother had told her long ago when she'd decided to raise Patricia alone after her husband left. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the bare floors, Doris made herself a simple dinner and ate in peaceful solitude. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, redecorating, reorganizing, reimagining her life without the daily presence of her family. But for now, in this moment of quiet aftermath, she allowed herself to feel the full spectrum of emotions, grief and relief, loss and liberation. She had stood up for herself, reclaimed her dignity, and taken back control of her life. Whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms in her own home with her head held high. The first morning alone in her reclaimed house, Doris woke at dawn, her eyes opening to sunlight filtering through curtains she'd sewn herself 20 years ago. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, absorbing the profound silence surrounding her. No footsteps overhead, no shower running, no voices carrying from downstairs. Just the gentle ticking of her bedside clock and birdsong drifting through the partially open window. She rose slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her joints. Arthritis had been creeping into her hands and knees in recent years, a fact Patricia had often pointed to when arguing for the retirement home. But Doris had always believed movement was medicine. She stretched carefully, then slipped into her robe and made her way downstairs. The kitchen felt cavernous without the usual morning chaos. No need to prepare multiple breakfasts, no rushed conversations or complaints about smoothie consistency. Just Doris and her thoughts as she brewed a pot of coffee, real coffee strong the way she liked it, not the watered-down version Tyrone preferred. Cup in hand, she wandered through the half-empty house. Patricia and Tyrone's bedroom stood bare except for the bed frame and an old dresser they'd deemed not worth taking. Sophia's room was stripped of personality, just a twin bed and empty shelves where toys and books had once created a colorful tableau of childhood. The absence of their belongings left strange gaps like missing teeth in a familiar smile. The house was hers again, fully and completely. Yet the victory felt hollow in the morning light, the empty spaces echoing with memories. Doris sat in her favorite armchair, the one Brenda always claimed whenever she visited, and allowed herself a moment of doubt. Had she done the right thing? Was her dignity worth this strange, empty aftermath? The phone's shrill ring startled her from her thoughts. It was Esther. "How did it go yesterday? Are they out?" Doris sighed, sinking deeper into the chair. "They're gone. Moved to an apartment across town." "And how are you feeling?" "Honest answer, I don't know yet. The house feels too big and too quiet. I keep expecting to hear Sophia's footsteps or Patricia's voice." "That's normal, friend. Any major change comes with adjustment pains. Give yourself time to feel whatever you need to feel." After hanging up, Doris knew she needed a project, something to occupy her hands and mind. She couldn't sit around all day listening to the house's newfound silence. With determined steps, she went to the hall closet and pulled out her rarely used toolbox. If this house was truly hers again, it was time to make it reflect her tastes, not the compromise it had become over 15 years of shared living. She started in the kitchen, removing the garish orange curtains Patricia had insisted on despite Doris's objections. In their place went soft blue ones Doris had sewn years ago, but never hung. Next came the living room, where she rearranged furniture, bringing her reading chair into the prime spot by the window. Small changes, but each one an affirmation: this space belongs to me. By afternoon, sweat beading on her brow, Doris tackled Patricia and Tyrone's former bedroom. She stripped the bed completely, bundling old sheets for donation. From the linen closet came her own quilt, one she'd hand-stitched during Patricia's college years. The floral pattern brightened the space, immediately transforming the formerly masculine room. Working steadily through the afternoon, Doris found her doubts receding with each deliberate change. This wasn't just her house. It was becoming her home again, shaped by her preferences rather than overruled by others' demands. By sunset, exhausted but satisfied, she stood in the doorway of the transformed master bedroom, which would now be hers instead of the small back room she'd occupied for 15 years. That night, sleeping in the larger bed, Doris dreamed of Patricia as a child, laughing, reaching for her mother with complete trust and adoration in her eyes. She woke with tears on her cheeks and an ache that couldn't be massaged away. The week passed in a blur of cleaning, rearranging, and adjusting to solitude. Doris established new routines: breakfast with the newspaper spread before her, afternoons in the garden, evenings with books she'd always wanted to read but never found time for. She reconnected with friends, inviting Esther and other church members over for coffee or lunch. The house began to feel less empty, filled instead with conversations and laughter that had been missing for too long. Still, she found herself checking the clock on Friday afternoon, counting down the hours until Saturday morning when Sophia would visit. They'd arranged for Patricia to drop her off at 9, giving grandmother and granddaughter the entire day together before pickup at 5. Doris had planned everything meticulously: pancakes for breakfast, a trip to the park, baking cookies in the afternoon. Activities that would feel normal, that would reassure Sophia that some things remained unchanged despite the upheaval. Saturday dawned bright and clear. Doris was up early, bustling around the kitchen, preparing batter for Sophia's favorite blueberry pancakes. She'd bought fresh berries from the farmer's market and real maple syrup, little extravagances to make the day special. At 8:50, she positioned herself by the window, watching for Patricia's car. 9 o'clock came and went, then 9:15. By 9:30, with no sign of them and no phone call, anxiety began to gnaw at Doris's stomach. Had they forgotten? Had plans changed without anyone informing her? At 9:45, she called Patricia's new apartment. No answer. She tried Patricia's cell phone, which went straight to voicemail. Finally, she called Tyrone's cell. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice clipped. "Doris? Tyrone, I was expecting Sophia at 9. Is everything all right?" A pause stretched between them, laden with unspoken tension. "There's been a change of plans. Sophia isn't feeling well today." The excuse rang hollow, especially with Tyrone's flat delivery. "She's sick. What's wrong? Can I bring over some soup or—" "That won't be necessary. Patricia will call you to reschedule." He hung up abruptly, leaving Doris staring at the receiver. She knew immediately what had happened. They were punishing her, using Sophia as a pawn in their power struggle. The realization sent a wave of anger coursing through her, hot and clarifying. This wasn't about Sophia being sick. This was retaliation. Doris spent the day alternating between worry for her granddaughter and simmering resentment toward Patricia and Tyrone. By evening, with no call from Patricia, she reached a decision. She wouldn't allow them to control access to Sophia. She wouldn't play their game of emotional manipulation. Sunday morning, she dressed in her church clothes, a simple blue dress and sensible shoes, and drove to the address of Patricia and Tyrone's new apartment. The building was newer than she expected, a 3-story complex with small balconies and a central courtyard. Their unit was on the 2nd floor, accessible by an outdoor staircase that made Doris's knees protest with each step. She knocked firmly on the door, marked 2C. After a long moment, it swung open to reveal Patricia in pajamas, her hair uncombed, dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "Mom," surprise and something like guilt flashed across her face. "What are you doing here?" Doris kept her voice level, despite the emotion threatening to spill over. "I came to see my granddaughter, the one who was supposedly too sick for our arranged visit yesterday." Patricia glanced over her shoulder, then stepped outside, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. "Now isn't a good time." "It wasn't a good time yesterday either, apparently, though you couldn't be bothered to call and tell me that." Doris crossed her arms, standing her ground. "I'm not here to fight, Patricia. I just want to see Sophia. Tyrone doesn't think it's a good idea right now. He's still very upset about everything. And you're just going along with it, using my relationship with Sophia as punishment because I stood up for myself." Patricia's eyes darted away, unable to meet her mother's gaze, a confirmation as clear as any confession. "It's complicated, Mom. We're all still adjusting." "There's nothing complicated about keeping a promise to a child. You told Sophia she could see me. You told me I could see her. Now you're breaking that promise because Tyrone is angry. What kind of lesson does that teach her?" The apartment door opened wider, and Sophia appeared, still in pajamas, her eyes lighting up at the sight of her grandmother. "Grandma, you came—" She pushed past her mother and threw her arms around Doris's waist. Doris hugged her granddaughter tightly, fighting back tears. "Of course I came, sweetheart. I missed you yesterday." "Mom said you canceled." Sophia looked up, confusion clouding her features. "She said you weren't feeling good." The lie struck Doris like a physical blow. She glanced at Patricia, whose face had flushed crimson with shame. "That's not true, Sophia. I was waiting for you all day. I even made blueberry pancakes." Tyrone appeared in the doorway, his expression darkening at the scene before him. "Sophia, go inside." "But Daddy—" "Now, Sophia." His tone left no room for argument. The girl reluctantly pulled away from her grandmother, casting a pleading look over her shoulder as she slipped back inside. Tyrone stepped forward, positioning himself between Doris and the apartment entrance. "You have no right to show up here unannounced." His voice was low, controlled anger vibrating through each word. "And you had no right to lie to my granddaughter." Doris stood taller, refusing to be intimidated. "Whatever issues you have with me, don't use Sophia as a weapon. You're one to talk about weapons. You used that house as a weapon against us, forcing us into this overpriced shoebox. I exercised my legal rights to reclaim my property. There's a difference." Patricia stepped between them, hands raised as if to physically separate their anger. "Please, both of you stop. This isn't helping anyone." "You're right about that." Doris took a deep breath, centering herself. "I didn't come here to argue. I came because we had an agreement about Sophia, and I expect that agreement to be honored." "Or what?" Tyrone challenged, stepping closer. "You'll call your lawyer again." "If necessary, yes." Doris met his gaze steadily. "Sophia deserves better than to be caught in the middle of adult disagreements. She deserves stability and the knowledge that the people who love her keep their promises." A door opened across the breezeway, a neighbor peering out curiously at the raised voices. Patricia noticed and tugged at Tyrone's arm. "Let's discuss this inside." She looked at her mother with pleading eyes. "Please, Mom, come in. We can talk like civilized people." The apartment was small but newly renovated, with laminate flooring and stainless steel appliances that gleamed in the morning light. Boxes still lined the walls, evidence of their hasty move and incomplete settling. Sophia sat on a couch that seemed too large for the space, watching with worried eyes as the adults entered. Doris sat beside her granddaughter, taking the girl's hand in hers. "I'm sorry about the confusion yesterday, sweetheart. I would never cancel our time together without calling you. So you weren't sick?" Sophia looked between her grandmother and parents, trying to make sense of the adult complexities surrounding her. "No, I wasn't sick. There was a misunderstanding." Doris chose her words carefully, unwilling to explicitly call out her daughter's lie in front of Sophia, but equally unwilling to perpetuate the falsehood. Patricia sank into an armchair opposite them, shame and defiance warring on her features. "I thought it would be easier if you lied to your daughter." Doris kept her voice gentle but firm. "Lies are never easier in the long run, Patricia. They just create more problems." Tyrone remained standing, arms crossed defensively across his chest. "We're not going to be lectured about what's best for our daughter in our own home." "I'm not here to lecture. I'm here because I love Sophia and because we had an agreement." Doris squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "I think we can all agree that consistency is important for children, especially during times of change." A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of a neighbor's television filtering through the thin walls. Finally, Patricia nodded. "You're right. I shouldn't have lied." She looked at her daughter apologetically. "I'm sorry, Sophia. Grandma was waiting for you yesterday, and we should have taken you to see her as planned." "Can I go with her now?" Sophia's eager question cut through the tension. "Please, Mom, Grandma makes the best pancakes." Patricia hesitated, glancing at Tyrone, whose jaw was set in stubborn lines. "It's Sunday, sweetie. We have plans today." "What about next Saturday?" Doris suggested. "Same arrangement as before. I could pick her up if that's easier for you." After another loaded glance between Patricia and Tyrone, Patricia nodded. "That would work. 9 to 5 like we discussed." "I'll be there," Sophia declared, squeezing Doris's hand with fierce determination. "Nothing will stop me next time, not even if I'm really sick." Despite the tension, Doris couldn't suppress a smile at her granddaughter's vehemence. "Well, let's hope you stay healthy, but I appreciate the commitment." The visit ended with tentative peace, if not full resolution. As Doris prepared to leave, Sophia hugged her tightly, whispering, "I miss you, Grandma. The new place doesn't feel like home yet." "Give it time, sweetheart. Home isn't just about a place, it's about the people you share it with and the memories you make together." Driving home, Doris felt simultaneously drained and fortified. The confrontation had been necessary, establishing boundaries for how they would move forward. Still, the strain in Patricia's eyes and the hostility radiating from Tyrone suggested the road ahead would not be smooth. The week passed, with Doris continuing to settle into her reclaimed space. She hired a handyman to repair small issues around the house that had been ignored for years. A leaky faucet, a sticking door, a broken tile in the bathroom. Each fix represented another step in reclaiming ownership and erasing the neglect that had accumulated during years of compromised living. She transformed Sophia's old room into a sewing space, setting up her mother's antique Singer machine by the window, where natural light would guide her stitches. The closet she filled with colorful fabrics patterns she'd collected over the years but never had time or space to use. Yet she left the twin bed in place, ready for the day when Sophia might be allowed to stay overnight. Friday evening, the phone rang. It was Patricia, her voice tight with what sounded like suppressed tears. "Mom, there's been a situation. I need to ask you something important." Alarm bells rang in Doris's mind. "What's wrong? Is Sophia okay?" "She's fine physically, but Tyrone and I—" Patricia's voice broke. "We had a huge fight. About you, about the house, about everything. He stormed out hours ago and hasn't come back." His phone goes straight to voicemail. "I'm sorry to hear that." Doris chose her words carefully, not wanting to seem pleased at their marital troubles, despite the vindication she felt at Tyrone's true colors showing. "What can I do to help?" "Could Sophia stay with you tonight? I need to go look for him. Check the usual places. I don't want her to see me like this, and I don't know when I'll be back." "Of course she can stay with me. Do you want me to come pick her up?" "Would you—" "We're pretty much packed already. I told her it was for your regular Saturday visit, just starting a little early." An hour later, Sophia was settled in her old room, which Doris had hastily rearranged to accommodate her overnight stay. The girl seemed oblivious to the adult drama unfolding, excited instead about the impromptu sleepover at Grandma's house. "Can we make popcorn and watch a movie?" Sophia bounced on the edge of the bed, already in her pajamas. "Absolutely. Whatever you want, sweetheart." As they settled on the couch with a bowl of buttered popcorn between them, Doris marveled at her granddaughter's resilience. Despite the upheaval of the move and the obvious tension between her parents, Sophia maintained a core of joyful optimism that reminded Doris powerfully of Patricia as a child, before life's disappointments had hardened her. Later that night, after Sophia had fallen asleep, the phone rang again. It was Patricia, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "I found him at a bar downtown. We talked. Sort of." She sounded defeated. "He's staying at his brother's for now. Says he needs time to think." "I'm sorry, Patricia." And Doris was despite everything. No mother wants to see her child in pain, no matter how complicated their relationship. "Do you want to come over? You could stay too." A humorless laugh crackled through the line. "Back to my old room in my mother's house. Talk about full circle." "The offer stands if you need it." "Thanks, but no. I need to be alone tonight, figure out what I'm going to do." Patricia paused. "Is it okay if Sophia stays the weekend? I'll pick her up Sunday evening." "Of course. Take all the time you need." After hanging up, Doris checked on her sleeping granddaughter, tucking the blanket more securely around her small shoulders. The situation with Patricia and Tyrone was unfortunate, but she couldn't deny the selfish joy of having Sophia under her roof again, even temporarily. The weekend unfolded like a gift filled with simple pleasures. They baked cookies, worked in the garden together, and visited the park where Doris had taken Patricia as a child. On Sunday afternoon, they sat at the kitchen table, making a quilt square, Sophia's first attempt at sewing under her grandmother's patient guidance. "Do you think Mom and Dad will get a divorce?" The question came out of nowhere as Sophia carefully pushed the needle through floral fabric. Doris's hands stilled on her own sewing. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" Sophia shrugged, not looking up from her work. "Maddie at school, her parents got divorced last year. First her dad went to stay with his brother, just like my dad is doing. Then he never came back home." "Adult relationships are complicated, Sophia. I can't tell you what will happen with your parents, but I know they both love you very much no matter what. If they do get divorced, could I live with you?" Now Sophia did look up, her eyes wide with hopeful vulnerability that pierced Doris's heart. "Oh, my darling, that would be up to a lot of people, not just me. But know this, no matter where you live, you will always have a home with me. Always." Sunday evening arrived too quickly. Patricia came to collect Sophia looking better rested than she had on Friday, but with a new weariness around her eyes that spoke of difficult decisions being made. As Sophia gathered her things, Patricia lingered in the kitchen with Doris cradling a cup of coffee between her palms. "Tyrone's moving out permanently." She stated it flatly, without emotion. "He says he can't forgive what happened with the house, that it exposed problems in our marriage he hadn't wanted to acknowledge." Doris sat across from her daughter, resisting the urge to say "I told you so" about the man she'd never fully trusted. "And how do you feel about that?" Patricia stared into her coffee. "Relieved, mostly. which probably tells you everything you need to know about the state of our marriage. She looked up, meeting her mother's eyes directly. You were right about him, Mom. You always were. I just didn't want to see it. The admission hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Doris reached across the table and covered her daughter's hand with her own. I'm sorry it came to this, Patricia. Truly I am. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like everything worked out exactly as you planned. You got your house back. Tyrone's out of the picture, and now I'm alone with a failed marriage and a confused 12-year-old. Doris withdrew her hand, stung by the accusation. Is that really what you think? That I orchestrated all this just to punish you and Tyrone? Didn't you, from the moment you heard us talking about the retirement home, you were just waiting for the right opportunity to strike back? I was protecting myself, Patricia, standing up for my dignity after years of being disrespected in my own home. What happened between you and Tyrone afterward, that's on you two, not me. Patricia's eyes welled with tears. It's never your fault, is it, Mom? You're always just the victim of other people's bad behavior. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've always been so certain of your moral high ground, so sure that your sacrifices entitle you to perfect gratitude and respect for the rest of your life. Patricia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Well, congratulations. You've won. You have your house, your dignity, and now you'll probably get more time with Sophia since I'll be working extra shifts to afford that apartment on my own. Before Doris could respond, Sophia bounded back into the kitchen with her backpack. Ready, Mom? Patricia wiped her eyes quickly, plastering on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Got everything, sweetie. Say thank you to Grandma for the weekend. Sophia hugged Doris tightly. Thank you, Grandma. Can I come back next weekend too? We'll see, honey. Patricia's voice was tight. We need to figure out our new schedule with everything changing. After they left, Doris sat alone at the kitchen table, Patricia's accusations ringing in her ears. Had she been self-righteous? Had she allowed her hurt and anger to blind her to the potential consequences of her actions? She had wanted justice, dignity, respect, but at what cost? The days that followed brought no easy answers. Doris continued settling into her reclaimed home, but each small victory, hanging a picture Patricia had always disliked, rearranging furniture to her preference, now felt tinged with the bitter knowledge of her daughter's pain. She called Esther, seeking the comfort of an objective perspective. Am I the villain in this story? Doris asked after recounting the weekend's events. Patricia makes it sound like I deliberately orchestrated their marriage's collapse. Esther's response was measured, thoughtful. You're not responsible for the weaknesses in their marriage, Doris. If Tyrone is walking away now, those problems existed long before you asked them to move out. But maybe if I'd handled things differently, been more patient, found another solution, and continued living in a situation that was making you miserable, continued allowing yourself to be disrespected and taken for granted. That wouldn't have been right either. Esther paused. There are no perfect solutions in situations like this, only choices and consequences. You made the choice that honored your dignity. Now you face the consequences, some good, some painful. A week passed without word from Patricia or Sophia. Doris called once, getting Patricia's voicemail, and left a message suggesting Sophia might visit again on Saturday. No response came. By Thursday, worry had turned to genuine concern. Doris drove to the apartment complex, climbing those same outdoor stairs to Unit 2C. She knocked several times with no answer. A neighbor emerged from 2D, eyeing her curiously. If you're looking for the woman and her daughter, they left yesterday, packed up a bunch of suitcases and drove off. Alarm shot through Doris. Did they say where they were going? Nope, but seemed like they were planning to be gone a while. The woman asked me to water her plants. Doris drove home with her heart racing. Had Patricia taken Sophia and fled? Was this retaliation for the eviction, denying Doris access to her granddaughter permanently? She tried Patricia's cell phone repeatedly, each call going straight to voicemail. Finally desperate, she called Tyrone at his brother's house. I need to speak with you about Patricia and Sophia. Doris didn't bother with pleasantries. They've left the apartment and I can't reach them. Tyrone's voice was coldly amused. So now you know how it feels when someone you love disappears from your life without warning. This isn't a game, Tyrone. They're my family. And they were my family too until you decided to tear everything apart with your selfishness. Please. The word cost Doris dearly, but her concern for Sophia outweighed her pride. Just tell me if they're safe. A long pause followed, then Tyrone relented slightly. They're with Patricia's college roommate in Boston. She needed space to figure out next steps now that I'm filing for divorce. Relief flooded Doris, followed quickly by hurt. Boston was hundreds of miles away, and Patricia hadn't even told her they were leaving. When will they be back? I don't know. Maybe never. Patricia's thinking about relocating permanently. Her friend mentioned job openings at her company. The possibility of Patricia and Sophia moving so far away hit Doris like a physical blow. She can't just take my granddaughter across the country without discussion. Watch her. Tyrone's voice hardened again. You taught her well, Doris. You showed her exactly how to put herself first, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. After hanging up, Doris sat in her quiet kitchen, truly alone for the first time since the eviction. The house felt different now, not just empty but hollowed out, as if the very walls knew something precious had been lost. That night she dreamed of Sophia calling for her voice, fading as she was carried farther and farther away. Doris woke in tears, the dream's helplessness lingering into waking hours. Days passed without contact. Doris left messages that went unreturned. She sent a letter to Patricia's friend's address in Boston, which Esther helped her track down. No response came. 2 weeks after their disappearance, just as Doris was contemplating a trip to Boston, the phone rang late one evening. It was Patricia. We're coming home tomorrow. Her voice sounded different, calmer, more centered. Sophia has been asking for you every day. Would you be willing to pick us up at the airport? Our flight gets in at 2. The next day, standing in the airport arrival area, Doris felt as nervous as a teenager on a first date. She'd dressed carefully in a blue dress that Patricia had once complimented her silver hair, freshly styled hands, clutching her purse to keep them from trembling visibly. When Sophia spotted her through the crowd, the girl broke away from her mother and ran full speed toward her grandmother, colliding with her in a fierce hug that nearly knocked Doris off her feet. Grandma, I missed you so much. Boston was boring without you. Doris held her granddaughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the solid reality of her presence. I missed you too, sweetheart. More than you can imagine. Patricia approached more slowly, pulling 2 suitcases behind her. She looked different somehow, her hair cut in a new, shorter style, her posture straighter. When she met Doris's eyes, there was wariness, but also something else, a tentative openness. Thank you for coming. Patricia set down the suitcases. It's good to see you, Mom. The drive home was filled with Sophia's excited chatter about Boston, the Freedom Trail, the aquarium, the funny way people pronounce their words. Doris listened attentively, asking questions, while Patricia sat quietly in the passenger seat, gazing out the window at familiar landscapes passing by. When they reached Patricia's apartment building, Doris helped carry the suitcases up those now familiar stairs. The apartment felt musty from 2 weeks of disuse, the plants drooping despite the neighbor's promise to water them. As Sophia disappeared into her bedroom to reunite with toys left behind, Patricia turned to her mother. Would you like some coffee? I think we should talk. They sat at the small kitchen table, steam rising from their mugs an arm's length and a world of hurt between them. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 weeks. Patricia wrapped her hands around her mug. About us, about the house, about everything that happened. So have I. Doris met her daughter's gaze steadily. I never wanted things to get so out of hand, Patricia. I just wanted to be treated with respect in my own home. I know that now. I didn't then, or I didn't want to admit it. Patricia took a deep breath. I was wrong, Mom. I took you for granted. I allowed Tyrone to disrespect you. I convinced myself we were helping you when really we were just helping ourselves to your generosity. The admission so long awaited threatened to undo Doris completely. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. My friend in Boston, she helped me see things more clearly. She remembered how I used to talk about you when we were in college. How proud I was of my strong, independent mother who'd sacrificed everything for me. Patricia's voice wavered. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing that woman. I started seeing an obligation, a responsibility, rather than the amazing person who raised me. We both made mistakes. Doris reached across the table, offering her hand. I could have communicated better, tried harder to address the problems before they reached a breaking point. Patricia took her mother's hand, holding it tightly. I want to do better, Mom. I want Sophia to see the kind of relationship I should have maintained with you all along. One built on mutual respect and appreciation, not obligation and resentment. I want that too. A comfortable silence settled between them, not erasing the past, but offering the possibility of a different future. "So what happens now?" Doris finally asked. "Tyrone mentioned you were considering relocating to Boston permanently." "I was. The job opportunity is good, and the fresh start was tempting." Patricia's eyes met her mother's directly. "But Sophia needs stability right now, and she needs her grandmother. We're staying." Relief washed through Doris. "I'm glad. Not just for me, but for both of you. There is one thing, though." Patricia hesitated. "The apartment is expensive, especially on just my salary. I'm looking for something more affordable, but the rental market is tight right now." Doris nodded, understanding the unspoken question. "You know, that house has always felt too big for just one person. The original reason I bought it was to give you a safe, stable home. Maybe it could serve that purpose again temporarily while you find your feet." "Are you sure? After everything that happened?" "On one condition." Doris squeezed her daughter's hand. "This time we approach it as equals, with clear boundaries, mutual respect, and open communication when problems arise." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that very much." From the hallway came the sound of small footsteps as Sophia rejoined them, looking between mother and grandmother with hopeful eyes. "Are you two friends again?" Doris opened her arms and Sophia came to her willingly. "We're more than friends, sweetheart. We're family. And family might argue, sometimes might even need space from each other, but in the end, family is always family." As Sophia snuggled against her, Doris met Patricia's gaze over the girl's head. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Old habits and hurts wouldn't disappear overnight. But in this moment, with her daughter looking at her with newfound respect and her granddaughter warm in her arms, Doris felt the first true peace she'd known in years. She had stood her ground. She had demanded dignity. And in doing so, she hadn't lost her family, she had reclaimed it stronger and truer than before.